Welcome to Goin With The Flow, a podcast about Cellino Plumbing. I'm the host, Lucas Cellino, president of Cellino Plumbing, and today I have our plumbing service manager, Justin Shank, joining. Welcome, Justin.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Luke.
So, Justin, let's start with the obvious here. You look pretty young to be a plumbing service manager. How old are you?
I just turned 25 last week.
25.
Yep.
Okay, so Cellino Plumbing's been around for 30 years. How does a 25-year-old end up the plumbing service manager?
That's a question, comes up a lot. A lot of customers, kind of surprised when I show up at jobs, but I don't know. I really just believe I got in at the right time. We were, probably a quarter of the size that we are now when I started here, and through some great guidance and great mentors, we've climbed to this spot.
Certainly, and I remember when we were promoting you, and we had several conversations, and I was young when I was in my position. I'm still young, but I said, look, this is going to be one of the hardest things to overcome, but you were always, very intelligent. You loved the trade, someone that we could rely on, and just real well put together. So we didn't have any concerns, but it is something that I'm sure you overcome on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Honestly, it was always, that's always in the back of my mind, right? And I think at this point, it's just I'm relying on selling myself on my knowledge and what I can, try and help people with rather than the actual number. But it's it's something at this point that's pretty much just overcome it. So
yeah, and there's a lot of older plumbers, and you have a lot of respect at Cellino Plumbing. So why is that? Why do you think that you can walk in, you get the respect? What do you do? What is it about you that makes it successful?
I don't know. I think it's a big thing. My time in the field, you got to sell yourself on the work you're performing, the work you're completing, and the end product really. And I think through other people seeing that, it definitely helps. How you put yourself together, how you converse with people. A lot of phone calls every day, older guys that, at one point in time were teaching me, and now I'm helping them through things. So it's something different every day. That's for sure.
Well, why don't you take me through the journey of how you got here? So let's start with high school. You're in high school. What did you want to do? Did you know?
I really didn't, so growing up, I've had, a job on the farm. I grew up in a kind of my later half of high school working in a local motorcycle shop. I thought for a while that was the direction, but it's great. It's an awesome thing, but for most people, it's a hobby. And I wanted something a little more, guaranteed sound. And then I was kind of looking at more into like business style stuff and looking at business schools. I looked at Medaille College. I looked at a couple, ones in different parts of the state. And I was like, I don't know if this is for me. I'm not really sure. So then I heard about Alfred State. I had a couple friends going there. And from there, I went to Alfred I was still planning on business. And then a couple weeks before classes started, I was like, I've always worked with my hands. It just is very natural to me. And I really had not even thought about plumbing or HVAC. And I was looking at this chart they have of high demand fields, and HVAC tech was one of them. Really got my attention. And again, still really not thinking about plumbing, but it was one class. So right off the kick, your first semester is pretty heavily based on plumbing. And I was like, this is way cooler than what I was thinking it would be. And it's kind of been history since then. I met a lot of great people there, and one of my professors, Scott Hillman, used to work for us, and he kind of hooked me up with Cellino, and I've been here since now.
Yeah, so I know when I went down to Alfred with Scott, you were, I think it was after your first year, yep. And Scott said, look, we have one guy here that is just outstanding. He's by far the smartest student that we've had here. So certainly went down to make sure I made an introduction. You came, I think, worked the first summer. And then school is 2 years, right? First
Correct,
year plumbing, second year is heating, cooling.
Yeah, I think it's a little different now, but that's kind of what it was when I was there. But yeah, it was a great course. Trade school is something that often gets brought up. Is it worth it? Is it not? And this is something I feel like it's really situational for me. I took a lot away from it. I really enjoyed, we spent a lot of time on history of plumbing, which living in Buffalo, we see this every single day, and I think that's a big upper hand. But, if you can find a company like ours and you have some mechanical, skill set, I oftentimes wonder if I would have known about Cellino before I went to Alfred, if I ever would have went. So that's why I say it's very situational. If you're not sure about a trade and you just want to kind of get a taste of it, it might be a really smart option. See if you're into it. But it's it's a very, very touchy thing because, you could come here, you could get paid to learn. If it works out for you, you're 2 years ahead.
Yeah, and that is certainly one of the selling points, right? And I think, over the years, trades have just become, I think, more accustomed to people that it is a good job. I hear it more and more, but go back eight years when you started. You've been here 8 years, right?
No, it's going on 6 now.
6 years.
Yep.
So going even back 6 years, though, it really wasn't a big buzz. So you're almost one that to kind of start this and get in before it was really well known.
Exactly. And that's, I feel like that's kind of a problem that lies in really the high schools and guidance. I think there's a bigger push now, but when I was there, I really didn't, of course, about trades, but you hear plumber, you think, oh, you're the plumber. This isn't anything crazy, or the electrician. And now I think it's finally becoming a realization that these are jobs that really need to be filled. It's a little bit of research. I think my social media just gets loaded with trade stuff because I tend to follow it. But there's currently, from what they've pulled, there's roughly 500,000 plumbers in America. They're saying 60,000 a year are retiring, and there's only 25,000 new apprentices starting every year. So that means in probably a 10-year span, we're going to be extremely, busy or just lack of people. And I think there needs to be a bigger push to fill these roles if we want to keep, building jobs and careers and keep building infrastructure.
Yeah, and I do think that the stigma has changed behind plumbers. Now, at Cellino, we generally don't hire many other plumbers from other companies. We generally bring people in and watch them grow that way. Why is that? Why do we do it that way?
I think a lot of people get comfortable. We don't have a ton of turnover, maybe a little bit here and there, but it's pretty rare. We get a lot of people that are comfortable. And I think that's the case at a lot of other companies. I think it's hard for people to pack up and leave and try a different company unless some drastic event happens. So I think finding a experienced guy who wants to make a career change is a little bit difficult, where, you get a young person and they want to work and they want to learn. That's where we seem to have a lot more luck. And I think it's a great thing because then we can train them how we want them to be. And, that makes it a little bit easier for them to grow and develop in the company.
So let's just go back to your career here in the plumbing trade. So you get out of Alfred State. What is year one, your first full year at, let's start with the summer.
Yeah.
So you do the 1 year and you come to Cellino to work. What was that like?
Day one, right on an underground job. I spent probably my first 2-3 months on underground pretty religiously, doing trenches, doing house traps. Saw a really good taste of that. I think that's a great place to start because that's something a lot of people have a hard time understanding because you can't see it, right? You can't just open the wall up. It's not there. You have to be down there to physically see it. Through the end of that summer, it kind of evolved into more like a plumbing apprentice. That's another beautiful thing about our company is our apprentices kind of go wherever they're needed. You really get a taste of everything. Then I went back to Alfred, did the heating course. And then once I came back here full time, about a year's time from the first experience, it was a couple more months as a plumbing apprentice. And then by the end of that summer, I was in a truck as what we would call now a drain tech. I think in the time it was, doing a lot of drain cleanings, things like that.
What was it like going to your very first service call alone? Do you remember that at all?
Yeah. So I went there kind of alone. Tony went there, set me up, and then took off. It was a mainline drain cleaning, very standard situation, outside trap. So it went really smoothly, but the calls to follow that, of course, there was a big learning curve. The actual trade, I feel like, is something, once you learn it, but learning how to work with customers and pricing and billing, that's where it takes some time and you second guess yourself and you're like, could I have said something better to make that more clear? But it's repetitive. Once you get it down, it should flow really naturally.
I remember, my first mainline drain clean, opening that drain. It is the best feeling you ever get. Customers, sewers backed up. So if that was your very first call and you get to a mainline, open it up, that must have been the best feeling after.
You feel like a hero. You got, better part of a foot of water in the basement. The riser outside's just about up to the top. You punch it open with the snake and it's a lot of fun the first time.
Certainly. So I guess, so that's your first job. How long did it take, or how many jobs were you doing until you really felt comfortable or knew like you're good at this?
I like to think that day's maybe not here yet. I feel like you can always learn and always make improvements. Probably the thing I enjoy doing the most is tankless water heaters. And, I feel like I have a very strong grip on them. It took a couple of years to get there, but staying up to date on the new products coming out, new ways of doing things. I feel like that day's always, to be found. But, yeah, I feel like as far as just a broad plumbing, it definitely takes the full time to get your license and lots of jobs to get a good grip on it. But
Yeah. So tell me a little bit. I spent a lot of time as an apprentice. I was a lot younger. Couldn't drive when I was doing it, but I just loved riding with the different techs, and they're all different, right? Different points of view. What was that like?
Everybody has the same end goal. I think it's very interesting seeing 10 different ways to get there. So yeah, I mean, you got some people that do not want to change their ways. They've done it the same way for 10 years and they're not going to change it. You got some people where as an apprentice, you can be like, hey, what if we did this? And they're like, oh, yeah, we should try that. So yeah, it's very interesting seeing different views and different ways of doing things.